First to you, I know Joel Fitzgibbon could be a headache for some in his party, but he believes, and I think he's got a fair point, to say that he's brought the party to a sensible position on a number of things. What's your view?
Look, I think first and foremost, Joel's doing his job as a local member, and I think I personally have a lot of respect for MPs that take their responsibility to their local constituencies as seriously as Joel does. You get some that come to their electorates and take their voters for granted, and I don't think anyone would accuse Joel of doing that. As for dragging the party to the right position, I guess we'll see come the next election. Someone put to me earlier today that he might have been spooked by the forthcoming News Limited campaign on net zero emissions and worried he's about to be outflanked. So, there's a lot of moving pieces on this chessboard, so who knows what's going to really actually happen on that one.
Yeah, Fiona Scott, what's your view as someone that formerly represented the seat of Lindsay, the place, I guess, synonymous with the Howard battlers of the day? To me, Joel Fitzgibbon was trying to say he still was supportive of climate action. Every time I spoke to him, he would argue that, but he says you can't simply cut loose those that have supported you along the way.
Yeah, look, Joel Fitzgibbon is correct about that. And one of the challenges that you have in this space is that, look, I absolutely support net zero, but you've got to have a pathway to get there, and the pathway has to be logical and sane, and it has to be able to switch coal off in a sensible way that you have the continuity of jobs, continuity of employment, affordable power, accessible power, and reliable power. Now, sometimes on the left, people will say, well, just switch it all off tomorrow. Well, it doesn't really work like that. And I think there's been parts of the Labor Party that has drank the Kool-Aid on the ideology as opposed to knowing how to transition to get there. And Joel Fitzgibbon has certainly been a sensible voice in that space. And he really has been also, though, brought there by his constituency. I mean, let's face it, Newcastle is an old coal mining town at heart. And, things like Bayswater and Liddell that's up there. Of course, the Tomago aluminium smelter as well. That's not in the seat of Hunter, it's in the neighbouring seat of Paterson. But it really is an industry over and above what you think in the Hunter of, great wine is about coal and how Joel Fitzgibbon managed that. I think the issues around Hunter really, for me, are the issues of Wentworth and Warringah in the Liberal Party, where in many ways these blue ribbon seats or red ribbon seats that have been traditionally Labor heartland or Liberal heartland, in some ways, the constituencies have changed, but I guess in the case of Hunter, the Labor Party no longer represent those types of people anymore. They don't represent miners, they don't represent those areas because their views have moved on, and I think that's really what we're seeing here today.
We got Daniel Repiccioli, Olympic shooter, 5-time Olympian, as a possible candidate, according to Andrew Clennell's report this afternoon. That sounds like that's a pretty good replacement, and you would think then, James, that the Labor Party would be quite hopeful of holding on to Hunter. I guess fundamentally what Fitzgibbon, if you look at his argument at its core, is you can only do so much from opposition, that effectively if you want to win, you've got to start moderating some of the edges of the discussion within a political party. I think fundamentally that was one of his main messages over the years, James.
Yeah, look, I think that's right, and I think that's one that Albanese seems to be himself taking on in terms of, the number of conversations he's trying to have at one time with the electorate. So I think Joel's right in terms of you've got to have a story that the electorate as a whole and the breadth of the whole nation can grasp. And I just want to, take up that point that Fiona was making about the Labor Party no longer representing these sorts of people. I just, it just doesn't stand the test of reason when you meet people, particularly with the much derided union background that often represent these people day in and day out and actually understand the ins and outs of their industry far better than most of the doctors and lawyers that might be on the front bench on their opposites. I think, the Labor Party still very much does have those links and is often derided for them.
Fiona, do you think that the Nats, I mean, obviously they'll be eyeing off the Hunter seat at the moment, but with the Fitzgibbon legacy comes a very canny politician, I think, who would know how to put his successor in a good position. I would not be underestimating Joel Fitzgibbon's efforts to maintain that as a Labor seat?
Oh, look, I think woe to anybody who underestimates Joel Fitzgibbon. He's a canny lad. He really is. And he's shrewd and he's sharp and he's very smart. And look, I think one of the challenges there is the best candidate at all, of course, would be Joel Fitzgibbon himself. How he transitions across is going to be, like you say, how he's going to do that.
Yeah.
But of course, you do lose incumbency, and incumbency's worth, probably about $1 million a year when you think of the staff, the travel allowances, the printing allowances, the advertising allowances, and all the things that can be done that is actually paid for under the Parliament House allocation, including the office and, everything else. Whereas if you're a candidate, you have to pay for everything from a standing start, which is obviously fair enough. So, I think it does level the playing field even over and above Joel's personality and charisma, that I think it does put the National Party in a much better standard. And look, I mean, Kieran, you and I, we've all seen polling about this seat since that 2019 election. And we know that Joel Fitzgibbon has been under a lot of pressure because of that polling that's come out from pretty much every news bureau, every news search, every polling business in the country sort of saying that, Hunter is really one of the seats to watch at the next election. In fact, the entire area, and when you talk about Paterson and Shortland, and there's 3 key seats up there. I mean, Newcastle, the whole Newcastle area is going to be the region to watch at the next election.
Yep, it will be. It has been seen as a strong point for Scott Morrison. I wonder if it continues through this recent hiccup in New South Wales. Fiona and James, thank you both as always. Appreciate it. We've got